everyone, and welcome to this RICS Tech Partner Program episode. My name's Andrew Knight. I've been with RICS for well over 10 years now, and my role is to look at the impact of data and technology right across the built and natural environment. RICS, as a professional body and standard setter, has over 130 members around the world, and they work right across the life cycle of land and property, and of course all different asset types, commercial, residential, infrastructure, rural. So a very broad church in terms of what our member and member firms do, and clearly a huge canvas upon which data and technology is providing huge benefits. And I'm really pleased today to have Thomas McAlpine with me from Addland. So please do join me, Thomas.
Hi, Andrew.
Welcome, Thomas. Good to have you aboard today, and great to be able to speak to you. I mean, the first question I always ask, I must admit, of any of our tech partners is rather than go straight into the bits and bytes, I'm always interested to hear about the skills and experience and backstory of the people, and indeed, the team itself and the story behind the creation of Addland. So please do tell us a bit about yourself and a bit of background on the team and Addland itself.
Of course. Well, first I should probably say that I unfortunately am not RICS qualified, so I probably am not as qualified as all of your 130,000 members. But I'm Thomas, and I'm the founder of Addland, and my background stemmed out of actually a construction background. I started working on sites back when I was 17. And worked in UK general contracting, and then I moved out and did some construction out in the US and Canada. I worked in oil and gas out there on pipeline and refinery projects, and then some big infrastructure projects. And then I came back and about 7 years ago, and I moved through into infrastructure finance, so the financing behind delivering very large projects, sometimes under the PFI framework, of things like hospitals, schools, prisons, and the investment behind those. And then about 5 years ago, I moved into land as a land promoter. I don't know how familiar your members are with land promoters, but it's kind of like the Wild West of the property development world. So promoters are the people who fill in the cracks between a site that's never been touched, i.e. it's a green field, literally still owned by the landowner, Mrs. Miggins. She owns X number of acres, and she's looking with an agent normally to see what her options are with that land. And so land promoters come along and they provide a knowledge base to help that landowner bring that land through planning permission, and depending on the size and the complexity of the piece of land and how many restrictions and considerations there are that affect the piece of land, and obviously the location, that experience can be invaluable to actually helping a landowner realize the true value of the land that they have. So as a promoter, most of my role revolved around identifying the sites that we felt could come through planning, getting in touch with those landowners, and then working through the process, which could be a 2 or 3 year process, to actually getting planning permission, and then flipping it to a house builder, and the house builder then take it on to actually build the homes. So as a promoter, a lot of my work, as I already mentioned, was to identify sites, see what else was on the market, see what was, I was looking at stuff that was off the market. Back then I was using Google Satellite View and finding it was kind of like playing countryside Tetris. So you'd look at the city, say Guildford or something, and then you'd say, okay, there's the grey bit, there's the green bit around it, where's the next grey bit likely going to be? What do we think the local authority is going to be willing to give planning on? And then I would then sometimes use, websites like DEFRA, Historic England, those types of websites, floodzones.gov.uk, to then find information about the land and whether it's in a flood zone, listed buildings near it, all the things that might affect planning. And it was a really, really slow process. It was really inefficient, and it took a long time to do sort of desktop due diligence on a piece of land. So that was that was a problem sort of on the one side, and then on the other side, it was, as I explored that problem more, not just in my sort of role of the day-to-day sort of aspects of my job, but I sort of started doing research in my free time. I also realized that just even the on-market stuff, so buying and selling land on market, was pretty poor experience for buyers and sellers. So the big property portals that we all know in the UK that would do mainly residential property, they sometimes they do have land for sale, but it's in the whole experience, the user interface. It's very patchy. I mean, ultimately, Andrew, what I eventually came down to, and this was 4 years ago when I started really building out the idea of Addland, was that Addland was born out of the idea that land is incredibly digitally fragmented, and that people are having to go off to a lot of different websites to collect data, to look for buying opportunities on the market, agents having to look in loads of different places, or no, they have to list in loads of different places to sell land, because there's no one particular marketplace designed to sell land, but also to give people, buyers and sellers, access to the data that's quite specialist, that's required to evaluate land. And so it was born out of this idea: how do we build a single destination that would be able to make that land visible and accessible to everyone, both buyers and sellers, and professionals like surveyors, and architects and town planners and property developers, and make it visible, accessible to all of those sort of user groups, and ultimately allow people to find, research, buy or sell land easily, all from the same place. And that was the vision for Addland, is that people could do all of those things in one singular place. And as far as the team we've built, it's been a 4-year journey to get to here. We launched, well, we didn't launch, I sort of incorporated the company back in basically the start of 2018. And then we spent a long time in development, prototyping, all the way through 2018, 2019, and really 2020 actually. And it wasn't until about just over a year ago that we actually really brought an in-house team. So our own software engineers, our own developers, started building out a sales function. And it was in April this year that we launched our beta site. So we launched on 6th of April, and we then, over the 6 months after that, to about 6th of October, we really we grew the business. We went from 0 agents on board to having about 400, and we then went from having 0 people using our software product to you have over 1,000. A mixture of people. A lot of them are RICS qualified, a lot of them working for agents with RICS qualifications, architects, town planners, and we then over those 6 months, sort of the middle part of this year, we were constantly evaluating how are people using the platform, what are they liking, what are they not liking, and we then over that time completely redesigned the website and brought in a lot of new data features, data sets, that people could use to enhance the way they viewed land and did their due diligence. And on the 6th of October this year, we launched the new website, and that's the one that you can see now, that's live.
All right, good.
We'll probably throughout on this session give a little quick demo of it as well.
Yeah, a little bit of a flavour. No, that's great. So obviously a reasonably long journey, but it's funny, I think, in not funny, but but I think it's always really strong when, as you've discussed, when you have that mix of technical and market expertise. I think there's always a bit of a cliche now that often sort of data and technology companies coming into the built environment, there's always a danger that they build a solution looking for a problem, in the sense that they build something rather than really understanding the domain knowledge. So it's good to hear you've got that sort of sector background to bring to it. You've kind of, I think probably already explained to some extent what the major problem is in terms of this sort of fragmented nature of the data, and you've certainly also mentioned a number of kind of different participants. But can you perhaps run us through the major types of people who are using the system at the moment in terms of the categories, and perhaps the subtly different ways they're using it as well?
Yeah, of course. So as I've already mentioned, that you and you rightly said, I've described the problem, and what you can get from that is there's 2 kind of key sides to Addland. There's the marketplace, where consumers and sellers of land, either agents or property developers, can go and basically interact with that property category, land. And we also do, as it happens, we do allow houses that come with land to be sold, so country houses, and have at least 5 years. So there's that. On that side of the business, you've got anyone who's looking to buy land to develop it, or they're looking to buy it because they're looking for a new home, that they want to come with 5 or 10 acres or 100 acres of land. So you've got development and sort of rural, equestrian, other opportunities on one side, and on the other side, which is sort of more sort of appropriate for today's discussion, is Addland Professional, and that is used by, I mean, we have property developers using that, we have housing associations using that, we have architects using it, surveyors, valuers, and house builders, and all those different categories of people are able to get value from the Addland professional product, because whether it be you are a surveyor and you're needing to measure distances and measure areas, and you're trying to understand considerations like listed buildings, flood zones, scheduled monuments, ancient monuments, nature reserves, all of that type of thing. We bring all those data sets together so that a surveyor can go out, survey a piece of land, and know all of those considerations really, really quickly, without having to do what I used to have to do, four and a bit years ago, where I'd have to go to each one of those data providers individually. Now you can literally, I'll show you the demo of that, but it's so easy now that it makes people's lives incredibly efficient. And whereas before I might be able to evaluate one piece of land back in the day, now I could probably do 50 or more pieces of land in a day if I was really going for it. So in terms of sort of the categories, and the developers, they use it even more. So whilst a surveyor might want sort of land considerations and the measuring tools, a developer will want to know planning applications, valuation data. So we bring a lot of data in from HM Land Registry, where we bring in price paid data. So we can show, it might be easier actually. It's one of those things where it's easier.
It's one of those things I think lends itself to being a visual demonstration.
It is very visual. So this is our homepage. You can see, we have the latest land that's been listed on the platform and things, and you can go off through here and then search for all the thousands pieces of land we have on.
Yeah.
I'll take you into the research part, and we'll go look in Guildford, and I'll be able to show you just how actually we bring all these data sets to life. And our strapline, so to speak, is that we are bringing land to life. So if you have Guildford here, we'll go into a satellite view. And you want to start to understand, if you're looking out some land here to the west of Guildford, and you want to start understanding, okay, where does ancient woodland sit, for example? That, as a developer, that definitely affects your planning, because you can't build within 50 meters of ancient woodland. So there's all your ancient woodland. How about flood zones? Okay, well, this land would be fine, but over here you've got some flood zones affecting the land. Now, those two very simple things that we've just done with 2 clicks of a button, that would have been 5 minutes on floodzones.gov UK, trying to line up the map you're looking at, whether you're using Google Satellite or whatever, with the map that they've got, which doesn't have satellite view, and trying to line them up. Ancient woodlands, that's a whole nother one. Areas of outstanding natural beauty, that would be another website you'd be going on. Green belt. So you've got all of those considerations. And then for surveyors, one thing that's really, really useful is, say you've got this field here, and this is the instruction that you've had to go out and survey this land here. Well, say that you really want to, rather than walking around the edge of this thing with a measuring stick, say you just wanted to come in and find out, well, what is the area of this? You can come in here and really easily find out within a few seconds that it's 11.43 hectares, and you can obviously convert that into acres. You can get a perimeter for it as well. And you can also do point-to-point distances. So if you wanted to know what the distance from one end of the field to the other is, you could also just find that out, and that's 724.19 meters. So a really, really powerful tool. And and there's the other features when you start to use it as a power user. I mean, property developers probably are the ones who use absolutely all of it. You can start bringing in things like planning applications. So all of these orange dots here are current planning applications. And say you actually wanted to go in and find out some information about that, you could go in, click on there, and you get this land report, which will be able to show you information about the current application. You can then go off and click on that. It takes you to the local authority website. Ownership as well. So surveyors find it useful to understand ownership. So with our ownership layer, we're able to display various colors to identify who owns what. This is if it's non-private. So blue is local authority. So you could click on this area and we can see it's owned by the County Council of Surrey. Whereas red is a company, and we can see this one is owned by Blackwell Developments, which makes a lot of sense, because if you turn off all of those layers, you can see this is ripe for development. This would have been something I would have loved to have looked at back in the day. All of that area you can see will come forward at some point, and that's why those people have gone and already bought up all the land. So, that's this is the power of Addland. It's bringing together all this data, whether it be ownership data from HM Land Registry, planning applications from all the local authorities in the country. The consideration data comes from a host of different data providers. And actually, in terms of the data providers, I can show you some of the data providers that we work with down here. So, people like Homes England, DEFRA, MHCLG, which has now been renamed, but, Environment Agency, Natural and Historic England. There's so many data providers that we work with. And, and the other thing, the great thing about Addland is one of our competitive advantages is that we will be generating our own proprietary data. So because of the marketplace side, we understand what we've had. Over 500,000 people visit our site in the last 6 months since we launched, which is an incredible, huge number of people for a brand new website. And they're constantly searching, so we know what type of land they're searching for, where they're searching. And then we also, when homes and when pieces of land sell on Addland, we know how much they sold for, and so we can start using that data to start showing valuation data, but for land, which no one else in the country does. So if a surveyor wants to understand, okay, what are the land prices around here, not just the residential property prices, they can use Addland to actually be able to understand the land prices.
Well, that's been great. I've got one last question for today, actually. Although we don't normally go into huge sort of depth on the bits and bytes, it'd be intriguing to know what sort of technology have you had to use to kind of power the platform and particularly deal with that data issue, because you're clearly pulling in lots of different kinds of data, and I'm guessing some of that data perhaps in its raw form is perhaps not terribly usable. So I'm guessing you're having to do a bit of curation and sort of manipulation in a positive sense to make that data usable. So what have you had to do under the bonnet, as it were?
That's a great question, Andrew. You're totally right. It's definitely safe to say not all data was born equal. Some is easier to work with than others. Some is an absolute nightmare. Planning applications, for example, we scrape millions of planning applications going back 30 years of worth of planning data, and then we are updating that on a daily basis. And you can imagine, you've got 460 local authorities across the country. Each one of those displays that data in a slightly different way on their website. So we have to go and get that, then we have to cleanse it, and then we have to then put it through and pipe it through onto the site. So planning application data is probably one of the most difficult. Then we bring data together from government sources. That is free data, but as I think we talked about offline, is the difficulty with some of that. As an average person, as an average user, you can't just go to DEFRA and say, I want the agricultural land classification data, because they'll say, fine, here it is, here's where you can download it. Oh, and it's a .kml file. Now, I'm not a particularly techie person. I wouldn't know the first things what to do with a KML file, but luckily we employ some rather talented people who do know how to take that data, clean that data, and then be able to pipe it through to the platform. And the value that technology companies bring is understanding where to get that data, and then how to bring it in-house, clean it, package it, and then provide that data in a user interface that's really easy to use. We designed Addland so that absolutely anybody could use it because it's so simple. And that was part of our mission, to make land visible and accessible to all. It's no point making this such a B2B product that no one apart from the specialist property developer or a surveyor can understand how to use it. We wanted everyone to be able to use it. And actually, we have country house buyers are using our product when they're looking to buy a country house. So they'll take a subscription for a couple months, and then they will do their due diligence on when they're looking to buy a country house. So it's not just professionals it's designed for. But the value of bringing, like I showed you the data providers, Historic England data in, and then being able to push that out onto a map, as you saw, where it's easy to use, that's the real value that technology company brings.
Indeed. Well, it's been great to discuss this, and I know we've got a date in the diary already to have another session. So I look forward to speaking to you again and digging a bit deeper into what this can do for the whole area of land, and also I think perhaps talking about the rural perspective as well. So look forward to chatting again, Thomas.
Me too, Andrew. Thanks very much for having me.
Pleasure. Cheers.